9 people? That's a lot. It feels like a whole baseball team. When I was young, I always dreamed of having a cute house with a white dog, just like in storybooks. But real life isn't always so nice. I finally got my own house, but when I came back from work, it was full of people, like a dormitory. I'm not happy about it. My name's Mary, and I'm 32 years old. I work in an office. I've been really focused on my job, but lately all my friends have been getting married one after another. Buying wedding gifts has been expensive. I started feeling like I needed to find someone too, so I started going on dates. Mary, when are you going to give me grandkids? Every time I went home, my dad David would ask this, and it made me really uncomfortable. So I started visiting less. My mom died when I was young, so I grew up with my dad, my brother, and my grandparents. My brother got married early and lives near our old home. He has 2 daughters, my cute nieces. I already have nieces at my brother's. Isn't that enough? But we always argued about it. Then my dad got in a car accident. When I reached the hospital, he was in bad shape. He passed away quietly while my brother's family and I were there. Dad, I wanted you to meet someone. I had a boyfriend introduced by a friend. He just proposed and we decided to marry. He liked to show off a bit, but he was kind. His name was Richard. Now that both my parents are gone and my brother has his own family, it does feel lonely, doesn't it? I said softly while petting my cat Lucy, just back from the funeral. Mary, you're not alone. You're part of my family now, Richard said, holding my hand gently. He was worried about me and came to check on how I was doing. Let's make a happy home together, I thought. Maybe I could find simple happiness. Little did I know what was coming. Welcome. It's a bit crowded though. I went to Richard's family home for a meeting. Patricia, his mom, was lively and straightforward. I felt a bit nervous walking in, thinking it would just be his parents, but there were lots of people, in-laws, step-grandparents, Richard's brother Charles, his wife Sarah, and their kids Thomas and John. Nice to meet you. That's a big group. The house, built by Richard's dad James, was a bit old and worn, but the family was so welcoming, it calmed my nerves. On the way home in the car, I mentioned how many people there were. Christmas or Thanksgiving must be quite something, I said to Richard, who chuckled in response. It really is crowded. I can't believe they live like this every day. I was genuinely surprised to hear this. Richard's family home was never big, and I thought it was just for gatherings. 8 people in that house, wow, Richard said. Originally, it was just his in-laws and step-grandparents. But then Charles, who couldn't keep a job, moved in with Sarah and their kids without asking. Charles will probably move out once he finds a job, Richard said, laughing. Back then, I thought Richard's family just had some challenges. After we got married, Richard and I, along with our cat Lucy, lived a peaceful life without kids yet. Richard helped around the house, and Lucy liked us. Charles and his family still lived in that crowded house. The walls were covered in children's drawings, and Patricia laughed, saying she stopped trying to clean them long ago. Sarah, Charles's wife, always looked tired. She was older than Charles and close to my age, so we became friends quickly. Hey Sarah, hurry up. Mary, don't just stand there. We're out of beer. Whenever I visited, it felt like Sarah and I were the only ones not sitting down. We were always busy, and I wondered if this was our fate. But the idea of Sarah doing this every day was scary. Sarah worked full-time to make up for Charles, who didn't work much. I was hesitant, but I finally asked, have you thought about leaving him? I've thought about it. It's tough. But we have kids, and he used to be kind, Sarah replied. I couldn't see any good in Charles, but I guess they had their reasons. That's what I thought. Around this time, Richard suggested, how about we build our own house? I was surprised but happy. I've always dreamed of living in a cute house like in storybooks with a white dog in the yard. I had never told anyone, but when I told Richard, he said, that sounds great. We spent our free time visiting model homes, choosing a builder, and a year later, our dream home was ready. We need to keep up with the mortgage, Richard said. Definitely, I replied with a smile. On the first weekend in our new home, Richard's family came over for a housewarming party. Here, Joseph, give them the gift. We're coming in. Oh, what a nice house. Patricia seemed really happy, like it was her own place. I smiled politely. Look, it's a party. Then Joseph handed me 2 cans of beer like he just bought them. Charles wandered around and found our bedroom, saying, this bed is so comfy. He jumped on it, and the kids joined in, getting excited. Look, there's a cat. They ran around chasing our cat, Lucy. Lucy is friendly, but she's never met so many people at once, so she got scared and hid in the back of the room. Poor Lucy. I looked at Charles and Richard, who were already busy with the party. Mary, Patricia wants appetizers soon. Can I use your kitchen? And sorry about scaring Lucy, Sarah said, feeling bad. Why is someone as nice as her with a guy like that? I care for Sarah like a sister. I'll take care of it, Sarah. You relax, I said, but she still helped with cooking while managing the kids. The step-grandparents were quiet, almost like dolls, not saying much. But they said, "Nice home, right, James?" "Yeah, sorry for the noise," James replied, even though the loud ones were the in-laws. The step-grandparents were the sensible ones in that house. So the odd ones were the in-laws, Charles, and probably my husband Richard too. After that, the in-laws and Charles started coming over almost every weekend. They partied loudly till dawn, and we got complaints from neighbors and even the police. Once Sarah, the step-grandparents, and the kids hadn't visited since the housewarming, but the in-laws put me to work without hesitation. I was really stressed out. Richard also started showing his true colors. Once, when I had a cold and asked him to pick up dinner, he came back with hamburgers. "I can't eat this right now," I said, feeling weak. Instead of getting mad, Richard said, "You need to eat to get better, Mary." What if I had the energy to eat that? I wouldn't have asked for help, I thought to myself. Once, when Richard was sick, I sarcastically asked if he wanted a hamburger. He got upset and said, "No, that's ridiculous." In short, this family was selfish and lacked empathy. They were in for a wake-up call. Enjoy your freedom while you can. You'll get what you deserve, I thought with a wicked smirk. A few days later, I had a business trip planned. "I'm off," I said happily to Richard on the morning of my departure. "Is your trip today?" "Sarah's also away on business," Richard said. "Really? I didn't know. What a coincidence," I replied. "Mom said they'd be in trouble without someone to take care of the house." Richard laughed mockingly, making me think he was being mean. I was busy during my trip. Days went by quickly, and before I knew it, a lot of time had passed. A big typhoon hit, and I contacted Richard. "We're okay, but the family home had some serious leaks," he said. I understood, thinking about their old house. The day I came back home arrived. As I walked from the bus stop, I heard loud laughter in the neighborhood. "Is someone having a barbecue? It's so loud. The neighbors will complain." Wait, what? I was shocked. The noise was definitely coming from my house. As I cautiously opened the door, I found bags in the entrance and graffiti on the walls. I was stunned. "Hey, Mary, welcome back," a drunk Richard said. Frustrated, I went to the living room and found drunk in-laws and Charles while Sarah made food in the kitchen. The step-grandparents were quiet, and the kids were drawing on the walls. There was also a woman I didn't know. Overwhelmed, I tried to stay calm. "What's going on?" I asked Richard. "Didn't I tell you? The family home had leaks, so they're staying here for a while," Richard said. "Who was away?" The in-laws, Charles and Richard, decided, "Why don't we live here?" Richard proudly suggested. Even with this explanation, I was stunned into silence. "It's okay. We're family. We have extra rooms." "No problem," the in-laws added, smiling. "Don't worry, Mary. The walls got a bit dirty, but it's just kid stuff," Charles said casually. "And who is that woman?" I asked about the woman on the sofa, playing with her phone. "Oh, that's Karen, a friend of me and Sarah," Richard explained. "Yes, that's right," she said with a smile. This girl, Karen, was kicked out by her parents, and Richard said she could stay. "Thanks in advance," Karen replied, leaving me utterly confused. In our not-so-big living room, there were 9 adults and 2 children. The room was messy, with scribbles on the walls far from the new house look. The family was loud like a dormitory. I couldn't help but lose my temper. "Seriously, 9 people is too many. Are you guys planning to start a baseball team or something?" Then I realized something. "Hey, where's Lucy?" I asked, but no one knew where our cat was. Dad opened the window to smoke, and Thomas said Lucy ran away. Charles looked at him angrily. "What were you thinking?" "I told you to be careful with the windows," I said, nearly in tears. Richard, looking annoyed, said, "It's just a cat. We can get another one. If you're unhappy, we can just get divorced," he said with disdain. "You said divorce?" I asked. "Yes, I did. I might not if you apologize," Richard said confidently. "Oh, really? Well, then, here, write this," I said, slamming down the divorce papers I had prepared. My section was already filled out. I got my bags from my room. Why haven't you written it yet? I'm busy, I said coolly to Richard. They were shocked. Angrily, Patricia said, Richard, divorce her already. We've built the house, so she's useless now. Realizing too late. Richard said, you'll regret it. But I had no regrets. You're the one who'll struggle. Just write the papers, I said, taking them and giving some to Charles. He laughed. When did I marry you? Looking at the filled wife's section, Charles said, Hey, Sarah. This is Sarah, coldly. I'm divorcing you right now, Sarah said firmly. Charles exclaimed, Sarah bites the hand that feeds you, huh, Joseph? He was talking nonsense. From my perspective, Sarah had been treated like a servant in her in-laws' house. Charles took most of her earnings, leaving little for living expenses. This allowed Charles to do whatever he wanted, and the woman in front of me was Charles's mistress. Mary, I think my husband is cheating. Sarah had confided in me before we planned our divorces. Sarah endured it for her children, but Charles started selling their belongings. She reached her limit. Sarah told me everything. Furious, we started planning our divorces. Sarah gathered evidence of the affair. Her recent business trip was a lie. We looked for a new place to live halfway. Like me, Sarah had no family to turn to, but a friend offered her a job in another state. It was a good opportunity, and our preparations went smoothly. All that was left was presenting the divorce papers. I want to get out of that hellish house, Sarah said, determined. She had a strong core but had been manipulated by her in-laws. Thinking it would be suspicious to return together, Sarah went back first. She soon contacted me, informing me about the takeover at my house and Charles's mistress moving in. All our actions until then were a performance. Knowing what was happening, I told Sarah, we're not living there anymore. Let the kids draw on the walls all they want. That's what I told her. Charles, thinking he could openly live with his mistress, happily signed the divorce papers. Let's go, Sarah. James and everyone, it's time to leave. The step-grandparents stood up and followed Sarah and her children to the door. Living with people like you, I had given up on life. But Sarah opened my eyes, James said, glaring at the family, and left with his great-grandchildren. The in-laws had been taking money from the step-grandparents' pensions. They were truly awful. Well then, take care, we said as we left. You'll regret this, the family laughed, but we ignored them. Months later, Richard contacted me. Oh, I forgot to block him. I could guess the content of the call, so I answered, Mary, come back. Richard sounded desperate. I barely contained my laughter. Come back, we're strangers now, I replied calmly. Let me talk, Mary. What do you mean? Why aren't you paying the mortgage? Patricia's voice came through, probably snatching the phone from Richard. What are you talking about? I have no idea. I played dumb while Patricia sounded frustrated. Apparently, the mortgage for the house had fallen behind last month. When I pressed Richard, he claimed I hadn't been paying it. What an inconvenience. While I remained silent, Patricia kept talking like a machine gun. First of all, this house, you guys had a combined income of $755,000, right? We could have built a better house. We built this as a new home, but it's not what we expected. Originally, they had planned to take over the house. Sarah had informed me of their discussions. Yes, that's true. But with Richard's $30,000 salary, the bank wouldn't lend us more. If we had taken a joint mortgage, maybe we could have gotten a better house. Hearing this, Richard, you lied. I could hear Richard and Patricia arguing on the phone. I ignored them, ended the call, and finally blocked his number. Richard had a pretentious personality. He always wanted to impress others, especially outside his family. When he suggested building the house, I already had divorce in mind. I told him a friend's husband got a mortgage on his own. How cool is that? I heard these stories like a spell. Richard, wanting to show off, opted for a solo mortgage. I had to hold back my laughter. He probably didn't tell his family because he was afraid of them knowing the truth. But I didn't care. The house was built to Richard's taste. I had no attachment to it anymore. Richard hadn't cheated, but there were no alimony penalties in our divorce. So despite him, I left him with the mortgage debt as my revenge. Let him suffer, and I was able to rescue Sarah, whom I cared for like a sister, from that house. That was my main goal. Later, they couldn't pay the mortgage, and the new house was repossessed. But it was a mess inside, with scribbles everywhere and walls yellowed by cigarette smoke from Charles and his mistress. It didn't look like a recently built house. Richard had to rent a cheap apartment, and Joseph and Patricia ended up moving in with him. They'll probably never leave him alone like parasites. I don't care. They're strangers to me now. The only good thing about my former in-laws was that the children weren't affected. Otherwise, they were the worst. Sarah, as Charles' ex-wife, successfully claimed alimony through a lawyer. She had to borrow money but managed to pay it off. I'm glad for her. Charles and his mistress became outcasts in their community and are now missing. They haven't repaid their debts, confirming how awful they are. Sarah is happily working at her friend's place. Her kids are doing well too. I hope they find happiness this time. James and Barbara seem brighter now, like a weight has been lifted. They sold the old family home and are enjoying their retirement in a distant place with their savings. That's great news. As for me, I've requested a transfer to a local office. I was reunited with Lucy, my cat, thanks to social media. Someone in the neighborhood had found and taken care of her. It's good she's friendly now. I live alone in my late father's house with my brother's approval. I'm saving to build my dream house, and someday I hope to introduce someone special at my father's grave. Today, I'm working hard towards that goal.